The antiseptic scent burned my nostrils as I stared at the positive pregnancy test. My third in 24 hours. 6 weeks along. Just enough time for morning sickness to confirm what these pink lines were telling me. My hands trembled as I remembered last night, the gunshot echoing through the restaurant parking lot, Marcus straightening his Italian silk tie as a man lay bleeding at his feet. I'd been so blind, so stupidly in love with a man whose last name should have been warning enough. The Rossi family controlled half of Chicago's underworld, and I'd been serving wine to their heir for months before he asked me out, never once mentioning the family business. His charm had been intoxicating, those dark eyes watching me across crowded rooms, his quiet intensity when we were alone. That night I'd followed him outside, hoping to surprise him with news of the baby. Instead, I witnessed an execution. Disrespect has consequences, he'd told the pleading man calmly before nodding to his bodyguard. I'd hidden behind a dumpster, hand pressed against my mouth to stifle my scream, watching the man I loved reveal his true nature. By dawn, I'd emptied my modest bank account and packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda. No forwarding address, no goodbye note, just gone, like smoke dissipating in cold air. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, as Chicago's skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror. Morning sickness forced me to pull over every 40 miles or so, my body heaving on the roadside as trucks thundered past. Between bouts of nausea, I drove 18 hours straight, stopping only for gas paid in cash, too terrified to sleep. Marcus had resources, connections. How long before he noticed I was gone? Would he even care enough to look? I chose Tennessee because my mother had once mentioned distant relatives there, people we'd never met but who might throw off anyone searching my background. The small town of Oak Ridge welcomed me without questions. Just another young woman starting over, one of many passing through on their way to somewhere else. Finding work wasn't hard with my experience. The Bluebird Diner hired me the same day I arrived. Just passing through? The owner, Betty, had asked, eyeing my exhausted face with motherly concern. I nodded, forcing a smile, knowing I couldn't stay anywhere too long. But first I needed money, rest, a plan. The one-bedroom apartment I found above the hardware store was barely habitable. Water stains on the ceiling, ancient appliances, a persistent smell of mildew. Still, it was mine, paid 3 months in advance with cash. No credit check, no references. The landlord pocketed the money without asking questions, handing me a single key attached to a faded plastic keychain. Nights were the hardest, lying awake listening to every creak and footstep, wondering if this would be the night he found me. Days blurred into weeks as my body changed, the small bump growing more noticeable despite loose-fitting uniforms. Regular customers at the diner started giving me knowing looks, but no one asked direct questions. Betty squeezed my shoulder one morning after catching me throwing up in the back alley. "My sister runs the women's clinic on Maple Street," she said, sliding a business card across the counter. No paperwork required. Dr. Helen Rivera became my lifeline, checking my progress off the books in exchange for cleaning her office after hours. "No father in the picture?" she asked during my first visit, eyes sharp but kind. "He died," I lied, the words sticking in my throat. In my mind, the man I loved had died the moment I saw the real him. Dr. Rivera nodded, not believing me but not pressing either. My plan developed slowly. Give birth anonymously. No hospital records. Nothing that could be traced. I'd need to disappear again afterward. Maybe head west to California, or north to Canada. Somewhere Marcus would never think to look. The pregnancy progressed normally, despite my constant stress and minimal prenatal care. I felt the first kicks while serving breakfast to a pair of truckers, nearly dropping a plate of pancakes from the shock of tiny feet pressing against my ribs. Strange things started happening around my 5th month. My chronically late rent check was marked paid when I knew I was short. The rusty refrigerator was mysteriously replaced while I was at work, grocery bags appearing outside my door when funds ran low. I suspected Betty at first, but she denied involvement with genuine confusion. The diner's customers had started leaving bigger tips. Older women pressed home-cooked meals into my hands. A local seamstress gifted me maternity clothes, left over from her daughter. The kindness of strangers became my safety net, but it also terrified me. Visibility meant vulnerability. Each person who noticed me was another potential link back to Chicago, to him. Still, I couldn't refuse help when my body grew heavier, movements more labored. By my 7th month, I'd saved enough to rent a cabin outside town, more isolated but safer for my plans. The owner, an elderly widow named Martha, reduced the rent when she saw my condition, insisting the fresh air would be good for the baby. My due date approached with ominous speed. I prepared meticulously, packed hospital bag hidden in my car trunk, false ID secured through connections Dr. Rivera discreetly provided, route map to a small county hospital 2 towns over where no one would know me. Each night I practiced breathing exercises alone in my cabin, one hand on my swollen belly, whispering promises to my unborn child. "It'll be just us, baby," I murmured into the darkness. "I'll keep you safe, no matter what it takes." I woke to a sharp pain rippling across my abdomen and sheets soaked with fluid. My water had broken 3 weeks early, the pain already coming in waves that left me breathless and clinging to the headboard. The clock read 3:17 a.m. when I stumbled to my car, tossing the pre-packed hospital bag onto the passenger seat. Rain pounded against the windshield, turning country roads into treacherous rivers of mud as another contraction gripped me. Each bump in the road sent shockwaves through my body as I white-knuckled the steering wheel, counting seconds between contractions that were already too close together. The baby was coming fast, too fast for a first-time mother. Lightning illuminated the county hospital sign just as another contraction hit. So powerful, I nearly crashed into a parked ambulance. A nurse rushing through the rain helped me inside, my legs barely supporting my weight. "ID and insurance?" the intake nurse asked mechanically. I handed over my false driver's license with shaking hands, giving the rehearsed story about passing through town. Husband deployed overseas. The labor progressed with brutal efficiency, my body seemingly determined to expel this child as quickly as possible. The nurses exchanged concerned glances at my rising blood pressure, the monitor's beeping growing more insistent. "We need to prep for an emergency C-section," the doctor announced after 36 hours of fruitless labor. "The baby's heart rate is dropping, and you're not progressing." Terror gripped me stronger than any contraction. Surgery meant records, anesthesia, vulnerability. The operating room was blindingly bright, the surgical team moving with practiced precision around my trembling body. "Count backward from 10, the anesthesiologist instructed, placing a mask over my face. I woke to the sound of infant cries, my body numb from chest to toes. "A healthy baby girl," the nurse announced, placing a swaddled bundle against my chest. Dark wisps of hair peeked from beneath a pink cap. His hair. Recovery was a haze of pain medication and hourly vital checks. My daughter sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside my bed. We would leave tomorrow, disappear again before anyone could ask too many questions. The night nurse had just finished checking my incision when I heard a sharp knock at the door. "Come in," I called softly, expecting another hospital staff member with discharge papers or care instructions. The door swung open, and time stopped. Framed in the doorway stood Marcus Rossi, his broad shoulders filling the space, dark eyes moving from me to the newborn with cold calculation. "Hello, Arya," he said, my real name sounding foreign after months of living as someone else. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" My arms instinctively tightened around my daughter as every drop of blood drained from my face. "How?" was all I could manage, the single word catching in my throat like glass. "I never lost you," he replied, moving into the room with predatory grace. 2 men in dark suits appeared in the hallway behind him, blocking any potential escape. "Did you think I wouldn't notice when the woman carrying my child disappeared?" His gaze dropped to the bundle in my arms, something possessive and fierce flashing across his face. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 20 inches long. "A daughter," he recited, each fact falling like a hammer blow. "She's not yours," I lied desperately, clutching her tighter. "I was seeing someone else before I left. She's his." Marcus moved closer, his cologne, expensive and familiar, making my heart race with unwanted memories. 7 months ago, you were in my bed every night, he said softly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You belong to me, Arya. And now, so does she." He reached out, and I flinched, but his hand merely brushed a strand of hair from my face with deceptive gentleness. "You stole from me," he continued. "Not money or jewels, but something far more valuable, my blood, my legacy." My daughter stirred, her tiny face scrunching up before relaxing again into sleep. I watched in horror as something like tenderness flickered across Marcus's hardened features. "What do you want?" I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "It's simple," he replied, sitting on the edge of my bed, making the mattress dip under his weight. "Both of you come home with me, become my family officially, and want for nothing for the rest of your lives. Or," he let the alternative hang unspoken, "that's not a choice. I whispered. It's an ultimatum. Marcus's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Not remorse, but perhaps awareness of what he was demanding. Life is full of those, he responded, checking his platinum watch. You have until morning to decide. By then, all record of your stay here will be erased. Arya Mitchell died in a car accident 6 hours ago. Very tragic. A nurse passed by the door, glancing in before quickly averting her eyes and hurrying away. The entire hospital staff had clearly been warned to stay away. Please, I begged. We're nobody to you. Just let us go. But you are everything to me, he answered, rising from the bed. His hand gently touched our daughter's head. I'll be back at dawn. Think carefully about her future, Arya. The world I offer has its dangers, but the alternatives are far worse. The drive to Chicago stretched for hours, my body still aching from surgery as I sat stiffly in the leather back seat of Marcus's SUV. The motorcade, 3 identical black vehicles with tinted windows, moved like a presidential procession. My daughter slept peacefully in a car seat that hadn't been there when I fled Chicago months ago. Highest safety rating available, Marcus had explained while securing her with practiced hands, as if he'd rehearsed the motion countless times. Exhaustion eventually overcame my determination to stay alert, and I drifted in and out of consciousness, waking once to find Marcus holding our daughter, whispering to her in Italian while she stared up at him with unfocused eyes. The Rossi estate loomed ahead as we passed through wrought iron gates emblazoned with the family crest. Security cameras tracked our approach, while armed men patrolled the perimeter of sprawling grounds that resembled a fortress more than a home. The mansion itself was imposing, stone and marble rising 3 stories, with windows like watching eyes, and a facade that spoke of old money and older power. A dozen security personnel materialized as our convoy stopped at the grand entrance. "Welcome home," Marcus said, helping me from the car with surprising gentleness, one arm supporting my weight, while the other cradled our daughter. The words felt like a prison sentence delivered in velvet tones. An elegant woman in her 60s waited in the grand foyer, her silver-streaked dark hair swept into an immaculate updo. "Final ment," she said, her eyes, so like her son's, moving from Marcus to me, and finally settling on the bundle in his arms. "Mother, this is Arya," Marcus introduced formally. "Arya, my mother, Isabella Rossi." I'd expected coldness or hostility from the family matriarch, but instead, she stepped forward and took my free hand between both of hers. "You have given our family a precious gift," she said, her Italian accent more pronounced than her son's. Her gaze dropped to my daughter, with naked emotion that seemed startlingly authentic. A young woman in a simple uniform appeared silently at the edge of the foyer. "Elena will help you settle in," Isabella explained. "Everything has been prepared upstairs." The knowledge that they had been anticipating, perhaps planning, my arrival for months, sent chills down my spine. Marcus led me toward a sweeping marble staircase, still supporting much of my weight as pain radiated from my healing incision. Each step felt like climbing a mountain, my body protesting the movement so soon after surgery. The suite he showed me into was larger than my entire apartment in Tennessee, with hand-painted ceilings and antique furnishings that belonged in a museum. But what caught my attention was the modern addition in the corner, a fully equipped nursery with a state-of-the-art bassinet, changing table, and rocking chair. My prison, however gilded, had been prepared with frightening thoroughness. The mansion's oppressive silence was broken only by the ticking of antique clocks and the occasional murmur of security personnel through earpieces. At night, I'd stand on the balcony watching distant Chicago lights, wondering how many other women had been swallowed by powerful families, their identities dissolved like sugar in hot tea. Elena taught me the unspoken rules of the household, which rooms were Marcus's private domain, when his business associates visited, how to recognize the subtle signals indicating dangerous situations. "The red roses in the foyer mean outside guests. Stay in your suite those days," she whispered while showing me the kitchen. My daughter thrived despite my inner turmoil, her cheeks growing rounder, her dark eyes, so like her father's, tracking movement with increasing awareness. Each developmental milestone felt like a small miracle amid the suffocating luxury of our confinement. Dr. Russo arrived weekly with his medical bag and sympathetic eyes, checking my healing progress while slipping me information about the outside world. "Your vitals are improving," he'd say professionally, then add in hushed tones. "There was a police inquiry about your accident. The case was closed yesterday." The days passed in a haze of exhaustion and adjustment as I recovered from surgery, rarely leaving the suite except for meals. Elena brought trays when I refused to join the family, always with fresh flowers and notes inquiring about the baby's well-being. Isabella appeared at my door on the fourth morning, carrying a small silver box wrapped in ribbon. "May I come in?" she asked, her formal politeness at odds with the situation. I nodded, shifting my daughter against my shoulder. "This is for the little one," she said, presenting the package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with protective charms dangling from the links. "Each Rossi child receives one at birth. The charms are blessed by our family priest." Her weathered fingers traced the metalwork with unexpected tenderness. "I was 19 when I came to this country as Antonio's bride," she confided, surprising me with this glimpse into her past. "I had met him only twice before our wedding." "It was arranged?" I asked, understanding dawning as she nodded. "I did not love him then," Isabella admitted. "That came later, with time and understanding of the man beneath the dangerous exterior." She cradled my daughter with practiced ease, murmuring Italian endearments. "You see only the surface with Marcus, the control, the power. I see what lies beneath, the fear of losing what he loves. I found an unlikely confidant in James, the head of security, whose quiet professionalism masked a surprising compassion. He appeared beside me during my tentative explorations of the grounds, keeping a respectful distance while ensuring I wasn't followed by the other guards. "You're the only one he's ever brought home," James commented one afternoon as I walked the perimeter path. 7 years I've worked for Mr. Rossi, and you're the first woman to stay longer than a weekend." He showed me the blind spots in the estate's surveillance system, a grove of apple trees visible from my bedroom window, a section of garden wall that couldn't be seen from any camera. "Just information," he said with meaningful emphasis. "Everyone should know their surroundings." The family physician, Dr. Russo, became another unexpected source of support during his weekly visits to check my healing incision. "The baby needs fresh air," he announced loudly for the benefit of listening ears, then whispered, "There's a farmer's market in town every Saturday. Security is lighter then." Most surprising were the moments with Marcus himself, glimpses of a different man than the one I'd fled from. I discovered him in the nursery at dawn, holding our daughter against his chest while reviewing business documents. His deep voice softened as he explained commodity markets to the sleeping infant. "She has your smile," he observed one evening, watching as I fed her by the window. For a moment, the air between us hummed with something almost like normalcy, the ghost of what might have been under different circumstances. The library became my sanctuary, 3 floors of leather-bound volumes where security maintained a discreet distance. I discovered Marcus's mother's journals hidden behind law books, decades of entries chronicling her own journey from reluctant bride to family matriarch. "He searched for you every day," James revealed during one of our garden walks. "Not delegated to underlings like usual. He personally followed every lead, checked every hospital within 500 miles of Chicago, obsessed over finding you both. At night, I'd sometimes hear low arguments in Italian between Marcus and his mother, her voice insistent, his defensive. 'She needs time,' Isabella would say, not knowing I understood enough Italian to follow. You cannot force the heart to surrender." The estate's elderly gardener, Paolo, slipped me a prepaid phone one morning while showing me the greenhouse orchids. "For emergencies," he mumbled, pressing it into my palm with gnarled fingers. My granddaughter escaped a similar situation. I couldn't help her then. 3 weeks into my captivity, Elena delivered a large white box to my suite. "From Mr. Rossi," she explained, avoiding my eyes as she placed it on the bed. Inside lay an ivory silk wedding gown, simple yet unmistakably expensive. A note in Marcus's precise handwriting accompanied it. "Saturday, family chapel, small ceremony as promised. No question, no proposal. Just another decision made without my input or consent." I stood at the window clutching the note, rage building like a physical force. Below in the garden, workers were arranging flowers and setting up chairs around the small stone chapel, where I was expected to pledge myself to a man who collected people like possessions. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Isabella's voice startled me from the doorway. I selected it myself. "Thought you'd prefer something understated." Her eyes registered my expression, and her face softened with understanding. "He's always been like this," she sighed, joining me at the window. "Taking control as an act of love, never understanding how it suffocates the very thing he claims to cherish." That night at dinner, I finally confronted him. "I won't marry you on Saturday," I announced, cutting through his discussion of baptism arrangements. "I won't be another acquisition in your collection." The dining room fell silent, crystal and silver glinting in the chandelier light. "You misunderstand," Marcus replied after a measured pause. "This isn't about ownership. It's about protection. Legally, publicly, completely." "Protection from what?" I demanded, abandoning all pretense of cooperation. "The only threat to us is you. Your world, your enemies, your business." My voice rose with each word, months of fear and resentment pouring out. "You think I'm the threat?" His control slipped for the first time, genuine anger flashing in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what would happen if my rivals discovered you? What they would do to extract information, to gain leverage?" The facade cracked further as he leaned forward. "The landlord who mysteriously forgot about your late rent? That was me. The replacement refrigerator? Me. The medical bills that disappeared from the hospital system? All me." I stared at him, speechless as realization dawned. The inexplicable good fortune that had kept me afloat during my pregnancy, the guardian angel I'd attributed to small-town kindness, had been Marcus all along. "I couldn't approach you directly without risking exposure," he continued, voice dropping to an intense whisper. "But I watched over you every day, making sure you were taken care of while I eliminated any threat that came too close." "You expect gratitude?" I laughed bitterly, rising from my chair. "For manipulating my life from the shadows? For bringing me to this gilded prison?" I stormed from the room, ignoring the pain still flaring from my healing incision. Back in my suite, I threw the wedding gown against the wall, satisfaction flaring as pearl buttons scattered across marble flooring. My daughter woke crying, her wails echoing my inner turmoil as I paced the room, bouncing her gently while plotting our escape. The prepaid phone burned in my pocket, a lifeline to the outside world I'd been too afraid to use. My fingers trembled as I dialed Betty's number at the diner, only to hear a recorded message that the line had been disconnected, another thread to my former life severed. Isabella found me packing at midnight, efficient and desperate, shoving baby clothes into a backpack. Instead of raising alarm, she quietly closed the door behind her. "There are 3 security shifts," she informed me, voice steady. "The 2 a.m. rotation has the fewest men." James appeared before dawn, his expression grim as he handed me car keys. "Southeast exit, 10 minutes during shift change. I can give you 20 minutes before I have to report the breach." His loyalty to Marcus apparently had limits I hadn't anticipated. Dawn found me in the apple orchard, the baby monitor clipped to my shirt as my daughter slept soundly in her bassinet. I'd spent the night planning my escape, the farmer's market, James's blind spots in the surveillance, the emergency cash I'd been secretly collecting from household funds. My fingers traced the intricate silver charms on my daughter's bracelet, weighing sentimentality against practicality. Could I really return to a life of constant struggle? Of looking over my shoulder, working multiple jobs, depriving her of the security and advantages Marcus could provide? A twig snapped behind me, and I turned to find Marcus standing at the edge of the orchard. Gone was the impeccable suit, replaced by casual clothes that made him look younger, more approachable. "Elena said you'd been out since dawn," he said, keeping his distance. "I've been thinking about what you said," I admitted, surprising myself with the admission. "About protection. About your enemies." The morning light filtered through apple blossoms, casting dappled shadows across his face. He moved closer, stopping when he saw me tense. "I went about this all wrong," he said softly. "Fear made me ruthless, made me forget that your will, your choice matters to me." "Does it?" I challenged, remembering the wedding dress waiting in my room. A flicker of something like shame crossed his face. "Old habits," he admitted. "Control is a reflex, a survival mechanism." The baby monitor crackled with my daughter's morning sounds, centering me in the reality of our situation. "I won't be a silent partner in whatever this is," I said finally. "I won't be a decorative wife who looks the other way." Instead of resistance, Marcus nodded. "I would be disappointed if you were. Your spirit, your fire, they're why I fell for you in the first place." For the first time since the hospital room, I glimpsed the man I had once loved. "What would this look like?" I asked cautiously. "This life you're offering?" Marcus gestured toward the house, the grounds, the world beyond. "Safety, certainly. Privilege, without question. But also purpose, if you want it." He took a careful step closer. "The legitimate businesses need oversight. Restaurants, real estate, investment portfolios. Areas where your intelligence and education would be valuable, completely separate from the other aspects of the family operations. And our daughter? I pressed, needing absolute clarity. What future do you envision for her? His expression softened as it always did when he spoke of her, genuine emotion breaking through his careful control. Education, opportunity, choices I never had, he answered without hesitation. And protection, always. But not the path I was forced to walk unless she chooses it herself. He extended his hand, not grabbing, not demanding, simply offering. I thought of Betty's kindness at the diner, Dr. Rivera's off-the-books care, Martha's reduced cabin rent, all orchestrated from afar by a man I'd fled from in terror. The realization shifted something fundamental in my understanding of the past 9 months. I want access to my own money, I stated firmly, not taking his hand yet. A separate account, legitimate income from whatever work I do for the business. Our daughter will know my family name alongside yours. His eyes widened slightly, clearly not expecting negotiation rather than acceptance or refusal. Done, he replied without hesitation. Anything else? The question hung between us, surprisingly genuine in its openness. Time, I said finally. No wedding until I'm ready, if ever. No pressure, no ultimatums, no decisions about our lives made without my input. The morning breeze carried apple blossoms around us as I watched conflict play across his features, control battling against the risk of losing us again. Standing in that orchard, I faced the impossible choice that had haunted me since the hospital room. Freedom with uncertainty or security with compromise, neither perfect, both fraught with consequences for the innocent life depending on me. Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, because your support is crucial for me to continue creating content here.